Recall from the last lesson that we used the Rails generate command to make a scaffold, which includes a whole bunch of generated code to make a user interface through the web. In this lesson, we're going to use Rails generate again, except this is the way you would actually do it in real life. I would almost never generate a scaffold, but I definitely would generate a controller. So what we're going to do now is we're going to generate a controller for static pages. This means pages that don't have any dynamic content or have at most a little bit of dynamic content. And the way we do that is with Rails generate controller static pages. Now, this convention here is called camel case. It's because of the humps. You would write it like this. Camel case. It looks like it has humps. So this is the camel case convention. You can also use the equivalent snake case. And actually, I'm not sure offhand why it's called snake case, but you could do this. But the convention that I adopt is to use camel case. So you should capitalize each word in the name of the controller. And you may recall that we've added some actions in the past. We saw the generated actions in the last lesson. We added this hello action. I'm going to add 3 actions in this lesson. I want a home action for a home page, a help action for a help page, and an about action for an about page. Now you can actually include the actions that you want on the command line. So let's put in home and help. And I'm going to leave off about because we're going to intentionally forget it, so to speak, and then add in the about page by hand using test-driven development later in the lesson. All right, we can see what that added. Let's get status. We can also just scroll up, but it's added a bunch of files. This is exactly the kind of time where just at the beginning I'd like to make one more commit. And then let's commit with a message. My convention when I talk about controllers is to use the title case, the capitalization, but then put a space in, because this is just an English convention. You add a static pages controller. That's not a big deal. It's just the kind of convention that I've adopted. And now one of the things I really like to do at this point is to push up the branch. This way, if anything goes horribly wrong, I have a remote backup. The way to do that is to git push with the -u. This is the same -u called upstream, set upstream, that we used when we first pushed the repository up to Bitbucket. And Bitbucket is the origin. Remember we did git remote add origin, so origin is Bitbucket. And then the name of the branch that we want on the remote repository. Let's take a look at that. This is Bitbucket, and we can take a look at the branches. Here's the main branch, master, but then there's also a static pages branch. So this will save us if we do something horribly wrong. We have a remote backup of this static pages branch. One thing that's useful to know is that if you want to undo Rails generate, you can just do the inverse operation, which is Rails destroy. So if we wanted to destroy this controller, we could do this. The reason this is nice is because there are all these files. It's not just the controller. There's a helper, there are views, there's a bunch of things that get generated. And it's really convenient to have just a single step operation. But of course, I actually want that controller. So remember, there's a way to do this. I'm going to do git checkout-f. This is forces a checkout. And now it's clean. So I've just undone the results of running Rails destroy. All right, let's take a look at some of the results of that Rails generate. I'm going to look at the routes file here, and you can see that the generate command generated a couple of routes. There's get static pages home and get static pages help. This get refers to one of the 4 basic HTTP requests. These are the kind of requests that the Hypertext Transfer Protocol, or HTTP, understands. And this is the most basic of them. This is what happens when you just visit a web page with a normal browser. You just hit a web page with a regular request. So you might guess this means that there's a home page at slash static pages slash home. So let's check that out. Put in the slash. And there we go, static pages home. Find me in app view static pages home.html.erb. That's pretty useful. So let's go to the index. Actually, let's go to anything. home.html.erb. And there it is. This route itself, of course, refers to the static pages controller and the home action. So let's take a look at that. And here you can see that there are these empty actions, home and help. This is actually one of the reasons why it's not a bad idea to start learning Rails before really mastering Ruby. This is the kind of thing, this is a Ruby function, but in Ruby, just plain Ruby, this wouldn't do anything. The convention in Rails, though, is that an action like this, just an empty action, automatically tries to render a corresponding view with the name of the action. So in this case, home.html.erb, this guy. Let's take a look at the corresponding help page. Be here. It's the same thing, static pages help, find me in app view static pages help.html.erb. So let's open that up. And by the way, there's something about this to go to anything that's kind of annoying. You might notice that there are a bunch of repeated files. There's test helper, for example, in each of the 3 applications that we've made. So there's hello app, toy app, and sample app. And this is inconvenient enough that I'm actually going to remove these 2 other applications. It's not that big a deal, but it's the kind of detail that will make our lives a little easier. Also remember that those repositories are actually pushed up to Bitbucket, so we're not actually losing anything. I'm going to just cd back and remove recursive force, and I want to get rid of the hello app and the toy app. If we refresh it here, we go. And what if I look for like test helper? Yeah, no, there's only one of them. That's great. By the way, this kind of thing here is exactly the sort of thing you should learn to ignore. As soon as it says it is all fine, Heroku does that too, you can pretty much stop reading. It's like, okay, well, it's just giving me some extra information. It's probably not a problem. Just for completeness, though, I'm going to run the suggested command here to ignore the warnings. This is the kind of thing that might very well never happen on your system. This is something that's specific to what's called Ruby Version Manager, or RVM, that's being run at the Cloud IDE.